Durans obviously refused to sign them and threw the T-shirts away. Do not keep the attempt slips in the same pocket as you keep the warm-up page. I know the judges get a lot of stick, but these are not professional referees being paid money. No one's bombed at Sheffield. And everyone's like, oh, Pete, why did you say that? I know there are probably some coaches out there who think they're VIPs, but we're not. It's the lifters who are the VIPs. Jake and I sat there and watched in amazement of these hundreds of people like filling this room as we drank some of their free champagne and canapes. For those of you that don't know, I'm the coach for Bobbie Butters, and she was called up as a last-minute replacement. Carola Gara pulled out a couple of weeks before the event, and Bobbie, being first reserve, was contacted by SBD and told she was going to be lifting. She and I were both obviously very excited about this. The way that it works when you're selected for this competition is that each lifter gets to designate 2 coaches. One is the head coach and one is the assistant coach. The head coach is the one who you basically see on the live stream, who's up in the holding area and out on the stage. And the assistant coach is not really allowed out of the warm-up area. So they don't really get the full experience. It's actually quite hard on the assistant coach because they can't really get to go into the arena, but they are really important because they're there as a backup to help for the warm-ups and help all the organising. I'm Bobbie's coach in that I write her programs, but I've also handled her many times at international competitions. I was the GB head coach for 5 years, so I was handling her regularly. Since I've stepped down, Jake Downs of Donut Barbell has been the one to handle her at internationals. So we're the 2 that she selected. So I was picked as her head coach and Jake was picked as her assistant coach. All the coaches, lifters and officials are in the same hotel. It's only a few minutes walk from the venue. And Jake and I got there, settled into our room, and then met Bobbie at breakfast the next day to go over her plan for the competition. And as a handler, what you're doing when you're setting out the plan is you're trying to outline what attempts the lifter's going to go for. Obviously, there's some flexibility in that because you can only do what the lifter's capable on the day, but you'll have some idea based on their training, and also to align the warm-up attempts. So work out how many warm-ups they're going to do, what weights they're going to be at, and roughly how soon you're going to start before they start lifting. So all of that will be in the plan. We went over that at the breakfast on the Sunday morning just to check everything, check everyone was on the same page. And then we were just chilling for a bit, and we were going to meet up with all the other GB people, so the other GB coaches and lifters, in the foyer at 12:30, and then we all walked over to the venue. Now, because Jake and I had only got there the night before, we hadn't had the coaches' tours and the coaches' briefing. So it's quite good to be going over with people like Paul Marsh and Jason Coltman, experienced GB coaches, because they'd had these briefings and they could show us where everything was once we got into the venue. So we wandered over like the 5-minute walk to get there, and one of the first signs we had of how big this competition was, if we were under any doubts, was that 2 young men ran out of one of the local cafes when they saw us coming and ran straight up to Durans and gave them their T-shirts to sign. Obviously, that's not normal for powerlifting. That's not the level of adulation that powerlifters normally get, people running over to sign things, especially when it's 12:30 in the afternoon. But that was really cool. That was good. Durans obviously refused to sign them and threw the T-shirts away. Obviously, he didn't do that. He signed them. Durans is a super nice guy. And then we went in through the stage entrance, the actor's entrance around the back, and Paul and Jason showed Jake and myself the layout of the inside. Now, the warm-up area, which is where you're going to be based for most of the day when you're at one of these competitions, be it international or something like this, was down several levels, so effectively in the basement of the building. And the journey from the warm-up area up to the preparation, the staging area, just behind where the lifters actually go out, can take a while because you have to get a lift. And it's a really slow freight lift as well, so you can be waiting for a few minutes. So we make our way down to the warm-up area, and it is one big hall down the middle, which is where later on the VIP meet and greet is going to be. And then as you walk in, on the left of that hall, there is a second room, which is where the men's warm-up area is. And on the right, as you look at it, is where the women's warm-up area is. And they're both mirror images of each other, either side of this room. And obviously, depending on which one you're in, that's where you're going to be based. And you go into those warm-up rooms, and each of those rooms is nice and large. There's 4 full Eleiko platforms and obviously plenty of discs to go around. The lifters are assigned platforms. So there is a sign up on the wall saying on each platform, who are the 3 lifters that are going to be warming up there. And the way SBD do it is they assign a light, a middle, and a heavier weight lifter. So on our platform, on Bobbie's platform, it was Bobbie, Meg Scanlon, and Brittany Schlatter. So you have a light, middle, and heavyweight. And the reason SBD do this is they're trying to separate off any lifters who might be directly competing for the same world record. Obviously, in a sense, they're all competing against each other anyway for the overall. But they're just trying to make it so that there isn't any conflict on the platforms. I mean, I sort of laugh when I say that, because when you meet these women lifters, they're so incredible and they're so supportive of each other. There's no chance of that. But it's just an extra layer that SBD put in to make sure that everyone's kept apart that might be competing for the same records. So you then introduce yourself to the lifters' coaches if you don't know them. We also have 2 helpers on our platform, and there's 2 for every single one of the warm-up platforms, and they are sent there by SBD to basically spot and load all of the warm-up attempts, which is amazing. It makes my life as a coach so much easier, because I can just say to them, can we have 100 kilos in 3 minutes? They know what all the rack heights are, so they set it up, and then it's all done. You work in with the other coaches, you work out who's got warm-up attempts. It's all really, really easy and a lot more simple than it is even at like a divisional competition. Just flows so well. We knew the 2 helpers, Jacob and Kim as well. They're friends of ours. That's another great thing about competing in your home country. A lot of the helpers you're going to know anyway. So that was all really cool. In the warm-up area, there's 2 big screens. One is the live stream that's up on YouTube, and the other one is just a live score sheet. So you can just keep an eye on the competition as it's going through. You can work out where you are as well, because you want to time your warm-ups from where you are in the flight. So I think it was Bobbie was 4th out for squats. So we knew we had to be ready for that point of the competition. So it's settled in the warm-up area. We go back upstairs for the kit check. The kit check is held in the corridor behind the platform when you see people come out onto the stage. Kit check goes smoothly. Obviously, everyone's fine at that level. It's a formality more than anything else. And then weigh-in is due to start at 1:30. There was a bit of a delay starting weigh-in. There was a problem with the scales. I don't know exactly what the problem was. I think there was a calibration issue, which meant that we didn't actually start weighing in for a good 10 or 15 minutes after the official start time. And if you're watching live, you'll have seen that the start was delayed. And this is why they delayed it, because the weigh-in was delayed to make it fair for everyone. Because obviously if you've cut weight hard, then that's an extra 15 minutes or so that you can't rehydrate or re-energize with food. So that's why the start time was delayed. Everyone weighs in. We go back down to the warm-up area, and then you have the hardest bit of the day, which is that weight, the void between weigh-in and lift-off. As a handler, this is where your job really starts, because to a certain extent, things like weighing in and kit checks, especially with a lifter who's already been there and done it, they sort of take care of themselves. There's nothing really for you to do as a handler. We'd already done all her rack heights. Actually, for her rack heights, we actually went out onto the main stage to do them. While we were waiting to weigh in, because of the delay, we popped out onto the main stage and just double checked. The thing is, she knows her rack heights and her Eleiko, but it's always good just to check on the competition equipment. And the best thing to check on is the rack that you're actually going to be lifting on. So that's what we did. We went out on the stage, double checked her rack heights. They were fine. So we're back. We're in the warm-up room. We're waiting in this void. And your job as a handler now is just to keep the lifter calm. Every lifter is going to be different. Some lifters want to be left alone. Some lifters want you to talk to them. It's your job to know that. It's your job to know your lifter. And then it's your job to decide when you're going to start warming up. So you've already got your warm-up attempts planned. You've agreed them with the lifter. They're on a sheet. I use this sheet that I'm going to put up here. And this is it blank. So this is it without anything filled in. And then this is it with the information for the Sheffield competition filled in. And you can see we've got all Bobbie's details, her details, the rack heights, the warm-up attempts, and what her predicted attempts are on the day. Again, that's the actual attempt selection is always going to be predictive because you just don't know until the lifter gets out there. And the reason I like this sheet so much is if I show you, so this is Bobbie's completed sheet from the British Champs only a few months ago. And once it's all filled out, what you can do is fold it a few times. Now I've got all my squat warm-ups, and that just sits in my pocket like that. And I'll clip a pen to it as well. And then when squats are done, bench warm-ups, that's in my pocket and I can keep referring to it. And then when bench is done, deadlift warm-ups. So just the same bit of paper just folded each time, and then you've got that in your pocket. A bit of experience, a tip, do not keep the attempt slips in the same pocket as you keep the warm-up page, because I have, on more than one occasion, pulled that out to check warm-ups. The slips have come with it and they fall on the floor. Luckily, up until now, I've noticed, but I made a point. I remember the last time, it was a few years ago, I was saying, put your slips in the other pocket. So I'll have warm-up in one, slips in the other, and then when the warm-ups are finished, I'll flip them round and keep the pen in the one that I'm using at the moment. So the pen and the current one will stay in my left pocket, and the one I'm not using will be in my right pocket. And that way, you shouldn't, I say shouldn't, it's not impossible. It should be harder to lose what you're using. When you start your warm-ups, try and copy what they've been doing in training. Don't warm up too soon. Don't get tempted into warming up too soon just because someone else in the room is warming up soon. At this level, everyone knows what they're doing, but like you could be at just a divisional competition and someone's completely messed up their warm-up timings and you copy them, you know, you're not leaving yourself anywhere to go. So stick to the times that you've got down. If you're going up first, like the women were, it's easy because you've got a designated start time you can work to. If you're going up in the second group, so the second flight of something, it's harder because you've got to watch the first group and then time based on where they are in their flights and rounds and things like that. So you might say, I'll take my last squat warm-up attempt when they're at the beginning of their last round or something like that. So you need to have this plan written down. So you go up into the holding area. It takes us like 6 minutes to get there. And that is a corridor which is behind the main stage. And then you have this small flight of steps which leads up to the area that you'll see on the live stream, which is like that little room off to the side behind the curtains. So that is the last bit you get to before you lift. Now, they only want about 3 lifters up there at any one time because it isn't massive. And that's where the desk where you hand attempts in is as well, and they don't want it to get too congested. So all you do is you're down in the corridor behind that, you're watching the screens, there's screens up everywhere basically, and when you know your lifter is 2 or 3 lifters out, you go up this little flight of stairs into that room. And I'll put a picture up here and you can see this is Tiff, ready to go out for the first squat. And so you can see that room, and you can see that door to the right-hand side. That's where you pop out. So that's where those little stairs are. And then to the left, you can see where the table is. That's where you give in your attempts. When your lifter comes off having lifted, you'll go into the room slightly, just double check with them what you're doing. Then you go to the desk and you'll hand it in there. You could see the relief on the lifters' faces when they got their opening squats. It didn't matter how experienced they were, world champions, world record holders. That opening squat is tough no matter who you are. And stepping out onto that stage, like it's hard to really get a sense across being the coach because no one's looking at you when you step out there. You can feel the energy of like the 2,700 people, but it's all directed onto that platform and you're just sort of stood at the side. It's hard to put into words what that's like. And the respect that I have for everyone on that platform, that isn't just the lifters, that's the loading team and the judges as well. Like, I know the judges get a lot of stick, but these are not professional referees being paid money. they're used to doing their refereeing in smaller venues. No one's screaming at them. And then all of a sudden they're on the stage and there's lights and there's smoke and there's sound. And it is like being in like some sort of concert. And they've got to make these calls. And there's extra pressure on all these referees making these calls. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much sympathy the judges will get even with me saying this, but I'd probably just give them the benefit of the doubt when you can. If you look at some of those judging calls and you don't like them, just try and imagine the pressure those judges are under being on that stage. So we go through the squats, all the lifters, back down into the warm-up room. For the bench and the deadlift, we went up pretty much bang on time. She was like ready to go, not too long for the last warm-ups. I think that showed as well on our benches and deadlifts. They were well executed. No one bombed. The organiser of the event, Pete Spence, tried to jinx us before the event had started, saying, no one's bombed at Sheffield. And everyone's like, oh, Pete, why did you say that? But he's obviously doing it deliberately because that's just what Pete's like. He's a great guy, but he likes to wind people up. Sooner or later, someone's going to bomb at Sheffield. No one wants to be the first one to bomb. So that was great that no one bombed out. When the lifters are finished and they've done their last deadlift, as soon as they came off the stage, they are stopped by a drug tester. So Bobbie comes up after her last deadlift after setting a lifetime best, and just as she's about to celebrate coming off stage, someone steps up and puts their accreditation right in front of her and says, Bobbie Butters, I'm here to drug test you. So it's a bit of a whoa, like crash back down to reality straight away. You don't even get to celebrate. But it's obviously, that's just the way it is. That's the way it's got to be. It's good that everyone's drug tested. And then they go through the drug testing. As a coach, you don't see them then for ages. They can be gone for a couple of hours trying to do the drug testing. And you're just there in the warm-up room coming to terms with the craziness that's just unfolded. The good thing about coaching the ladies is we coaches could then sneak back into the auditorium and watch all the men's deadlifts. So we went to the upper circle and just sat on the steps in the auditorium and watched all of the men's deadlifts, which was incredible. It was great to watch. And it was especially great to watch the GB guys lift. And then the only thing left on the day is for the VIP meet and greet, which obviously the coaches aren't involved in. I know there are probably some coaches out there who think they're VIPs, but we're not. It's the lifters who are the VIPs. And it's great because so often all of the feedback they get is online. And obviously it's not all good feedback. And even when it is good, it's at a distance. It's not in person. And the VIP meet and greet is great because all of these lifters have a queue of people waiting to meet them and basically tell them how great they are, how inspirational they are, how much they're loved by the people who watch them. And after such a long, brutal day of competing, it's just the perfect way to finish. None of the lifters that I spoke to begrudged being there. They all enjoyed it. They're humble and they're respectful. And afterwards, they'll walk up to one of the other female lifters that they may have even beaten. That's the crazy thing. They'll beat someone, go up to them and tell them that the other lifter is inspirational to them. Now, I've met lifters who aren't like that because lifters are people and some people are nice and some people are not so nice. But all I can tell you is in that warm-up room of female lifters, there wasn't anyone who wasn't nice. And not only that, I would say if you could take any young or beginning lifter around that room to watch the way those lifters conducted themselves, they could only be inspired by it. Anyway, so you have the VIP meet and greet, that finishes, it's all over. Jake and I sat there and watched in amazement of these hundreds of people filling this room as we drank some of their free champagne and canapes, which was quite delightful. And then it's over. And a couple of days later, you're back in reality. I hope I managed to try and convey what it feels like to be there because it's a privilege. It might be the only time I ever get to coach in that event. And if it is, I won't be sad because I got to do it. And hopefully by putting this information out there, some of you can feel a bit closer to being behind the scenes. Let's just hope the sport continues to go from strength to strength and that these events get bigger and more popular. And all I can say is that right now, powerlifting is in a great place. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.